Do you think you're ever going to teach classes?
Teach classes again? Yes. I did. Can't remember the time frame exactly. I want to say mid 18-ish, most of 19. I was mostly in the local area, as far away from Kentucky as Alabama, for example, but movement focused classes. And it was only after getting badgered by local shooters over and over again, and like, hey, how are you able to do that? Or how do you train that? And like, hey man, you should teach that. I do have instructor background. I'm an instructor currently at Mark 7. So it's not about being able to pass the information along. It's about the time, the time investment. I set up a handful of classes in 19, immediately prior to a major match at that range. So if you're a local shooter and you wanted to get a tune-up right before that, that state championship, you could. And trying to balance work, my own training, my own preparation for that same major match, and my home life, and all of it together, it kind of fell apart when COVID kicked off. I was trying to organize classes, and then ammo started drying up, components started drying up, and now that I work full time Mark 7, I'm traveling around the country. It's kind of hard to schedule a class 3 months in advance when I don't even have my travel calendar for going all over the country scheduled.
I heard that.
Yeah. So having to prioritize. There's only so many hours in the day, and I want to get back into it. I enjoyed doing it. It kept me tuned up. It kept me having to refine the curriculum and find what worked for different people. But as you know, Kita, it takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, it's a little bit of work. It's very rewarding though. When that light bulb moment happens, there's nothing like it.
Yeah. One of the things I did as often as possible was set up a simple, and it changed from day to day or from class to class, but set up a medium course, a lot of tight movement in it to basically make it as obvious as possible where they're losing time. Coming around tight corners, retreating with a gun in your hand in different directions, all wide open targets. I wasn't trying to test their accuracy as much as I was trying to test their movement, which was what they were at the class for. And being able to see people shave, 3-4 seconds off a run. Hey man, we run it 3 times at the start. You're at 18, 19, and 1950, and then at the end of the day, yeah, you're warmed up. A lot of that, but still being able to show someone something that, hey, you got something out of this, and you're able to record that and identify what you were doing prior and what it looks like when you're doing it.
Yeah. I have my students shoot the stage cold at the beginning of the day. Then I have them shoot it one more time. So we're sort of establishing a baseline. And if I see anything super weird that they're doing, I'll say something. But for the most part, I'm just letting them establish a baseline. Then we go do drills all day, just fixing things that I'm seeing. And then we come back and shoot the same stage at the end of the day after not having shot it all day, and they can compare. And I'll see anywhere from a 3-second improvement to, I don't know, a 12-second improvement, I think was one of my better ones. Well, if it's a brand new shooter, I might see a 50-second improvement.
Yeah,
how that goes.
It's like the Biggest Loser, like, and they're 500 pounds the first way and they lost 75. Like, well, not that big, but yeah, I don't know. So it's interesting what you said there too, John. So like, to me, since you shoot a bunch of different platforms, like what is the ratio for you of like how important movement is versus the actual shooting part, like in the game?
So we talked about, putting a dot on your gun and it showing you instant feedback. High cap divisions do the same thing when it comes to movement. Okay, because you're not having to think about as much in between positions. Single stack. I'm shooting single stack major for Classic Nats here in 2 weeks, and watching my own videos, especially from Area 6, I'm seeing, I am hitching my steps coming into position to finish that load. It's affecting what I do. Compare that to CO open, what have you. You are in those high cap divisions, you are able to emphasize and focus on your movement, on your stage planning. We talk about stage planning being hard. High cap lets you be lazier with your stage planning. So when it comes to movement, would I say it's more important in the high cap divisions? Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll go with that. I'll say that having, you know, when there's less limitations on your gear, everything else matters more. So it's, if you're only reloading once per stage, if you're reloading at all, that reload becomes less important.
I asked that question to almost every one of our guests, and that was the first time. And that makes a lot of sense. It depends on your division. If you're high cap or low cap, movement is less important for low cap because there's a lot more technical stuff you're doing throughout a stage. That's
And just like we talked about how the dot is great for giving you immediate feedback on your shooting, it does the exact same thing for your movement. So if you're dry firing, moving between positions, and you just get a sight picture finger off the trigger because you're testing your movement, you come into that position and it should be coming horizontally under the target. If you're seeing this and you're not pulling the trigger, then you know it's your movement, not your trigger press. And that will give you immediate feedback.
Mm-hmm. All right, talking about immediate feedback, sorry to kind of change gears completely here, but I know that you specifically do this, and I've heard people refer, and I've heard them say, oh, Vlieger tells me that I should do this. So let's talk about looking at scores throughout the day of a match here, because like there's a lot of people that don't like to do it. I know you like to do it, and just give, you know, the viewers at home the reasons why you like to look at the scores throughout the day and why it doesn't necessarily make you nervous, but it just kind of sets you up to let you know what you have to do towards the end.
It depends on your skill level.
Well,
and what you're going for.
Well, do you suggest that a newer shooter, everybody should be looking at scores throughout the day, or like what is your suggestion on? Because I always look at scores.
If it makes you anxious, don't. You know, it's not a necessity.
Well, should it make you anxious? Is my, like, you know, it makes people anxious, but I think they're just looking at it the wrong way and they're getting the wrong information out of it. Versus, you know,
so let's say I walk up to a major match. I like to shoot on Sundays, and so there's been 2 or 3 days of shooters before me. So I do look at those scores. I look at who's in the lead. I look at who is still to shoot, because later on when I look at scores, I want to know who I'm looking for, you know, who I'm looking at. And Practice Score Competitor app, by the way, best $9.99. I think I paid for that back in 16.
Amen.
So I've gotten my $10 worth. But the competitor app does a great job of being able to directly compare yourself to other shooters that have already shot or have not shot yet, and get updates and see and track it. And that can be a good or bad thing. I used to look at scores in depth, meaning before I shoot, I know what I have to, you know, I know what to expect. I know if I beat someone instantly or not. Nowadays, I still look at scores, but I've tuned that back a lot. I don't look at particular stages of myself in relation to anybody else or anything. I don't go in depth until after I've shot that stage.
Okay.
Because I want to know where I stand, and it becomes more important as a match goes on. Area 8 last year, my first area match win since 17. I was very excited for it, you know. But going into the last 3 stages, I knew that I was in the lead. So like Tilly had shot already, and I look at this very tight, I call it a field stage on a postage stamp, or field course on a postage stamp, very small shooting area. And I saw Tilly did it in 9 or 10 seconds, and I'm like, okay, we got to push it. And I knew that I couldn't go ham because he did really well on this stage, and if I try to beat him, the wheels are going to come off. It's high risk for an implosion. So I just wanted to go fast, but I wanted to be controlled throughout. And yeah, he beat me on that stage, but it was a marginal victory. So now, if that stage had been the last stage in the match, man, it probably would have been a dumpster fire, because, you know, if I knew I had to, depending on the points on the spread. But so boom, okay, that stage out of it, and then 2 stages left. So boom, I had a 20-point lead on him going into that stage. He gained 5 on me. Now we're at 15. 1 stage left. Okay. So I knew that going in, that where the discrepancy, that's where it matters. First stage doesn't matter. Focus on you. But if you are looking at, you know, what you need to win a class, it may help you, although there's usually a lot more people in contention for like winning A or winning M than the few who are in contention in any given match, any given day for any given division. But one of the reasons why I look at scores the way I do is I'm there to achieve something. So I want to know. Reason why I shoot Sundays is I want to put my gun in a bag knowing I won or lost. I don't want to spend the next 3-hour drive home trying to not, get pulled over checking scores. Okay. Or having it in my head. I just want to boom, know it and leave. So area 8, I knew what I had to do on that stage. Okay. I know that if I tie Tilly on this stage, I win. So, and if I don't tie him, if I do worse, I got to do the math. Right. So going, I shoot that stage, I'm unloading, show and clear. I know from shot calling that I have good hits. I know I don't have any mics. Maybe there's a delta. And they read that time. He reads that time off. And I'm sad it's not on video because it was very, high school football victory-esque, put fist in the air, all that. Right. I was excited because I knew that I won.
Right.
I knew because my time was better and my hits were equal or roughly equal. I knew I tied him or better. Right. So that is why I look at scores because it's in my head. I need to know where I stand. I need to know going into those last few stages if it's worth, hitting the afterburners and hoping to hook up. Because if you don't put the afterburners on and hook up, you lose.
Right. Well, building off of that now. Let's say you weren't up 15 points. Let's say you were down 20 points with 2 to go, and there was 2 people in between you, and you know that if you crushed these last 2 stages, you could win, or your 3rd or 2nd place finish could turn into a 6th or a 7th. You go for the win, or do you just go for the solid finish?
At nationals, I go for the solid finish.
At nationals, you go for
it's a marathon. So Mike, there are 3 basic requirements you need to be able to meet before you should really be looking at scores without it kind of messing you up. One is that you already have to be consistent. Like at nationals, it is a marathon. You have to stay consistent through the entire thing. And hopefully somebody else messes up worse than you do.
Well, I'm not talking about
everyone's going to mess up.
I'm talking about at the end of the match. I'm not talking about on stage 3 of 20. I'm talking about like, hey, it's our second to last stage of a 20-stage match. And like, we're so close here and I'm a little bit down. And like, I can either just shoot solid and be consistent and not really push it and finish well, finish 2nd, 3rd, whatever, be on the podium, or I can try to hit the gas and take 1st. But by risking 1st, I could be in 5th. I'm not talking, and this is the other thing where people get nervous by looking at scores. And like, obviously the guy that's in 1st place on that stage did well. Like you're not in 1st place on that stage unless you shot a good stage. So for that to get,
it's not about winning every stage either, I think is what
no.
Keita say.
You're not.
Well,
so
my biggest thing with it is picking up shots on the guy when you're unloading and showing clear. Because like if everybody, I know I'm one of the faster ones, and if everybody on the top is generally 12.5, and then you call out 15, like I know something went wrong there. Like I know my plan wasn't 2.5, 3 seconds slower than these guys, and like
that's kind of a different topic. I wouldn't mind discussing it, but I think Keita was making points.
Point number 1 is you have to be able to be consistent, first of all. Point number 2, you have to be able to calculate risk versus reward. And point number 3, once you've calculated that risk versus reward, you have to be able to dial it up or dial it down, depending on what's needed, and know how much to do that by so the wheels don't fall off, or so that you're not so far behind with being consistent. You can dial it back too far and not be taking any risks. And that's a problem. You have to be able to take risks within your ability to be consistent. What can I do? Like you said earlier, 10 times in a row. Well, then that's not really a risk. That's consistency. So those are the 3 things.
To simplify the answer as much as possible, Mike, the most obvious chance to make a difference when looking at scores is if there's a risky plan with high reward and a conservative plan with where you just, try to be smooth. Okay. A swinger, a drop turner array, whatever. Hey, if I take this swinger in 1 pass, it's worth it, as opposed to whatever. We could come up with scenarios. If there's a passing lane on the stage, if there's no passing lane as a stand and shoot, don't matter.
You're not going to push it. You're just going to do what you can do, because there's nowhere that you can potentially make up time.
Correct. Unless, they drop their gun, or.
Which you never hope to see. You don't want to win that way.
But
that makes sense. So limit the risk to somewhere that's an acceptable risk, and not where you're just trying to push your ability to 110% and the wheels fall off.
Exactly. So knowing where you stand, great example, Max Leograndis last year after Freilich DQ'd, like from everything, I wasn't shooting with him, but from everything I hear, he was kind of like, oh, cool. I'll just, no risks, Just go.
I
Don't
wonder how that would have changed his match though, because I think Freilich was winning at that point, and that probably took a lot of pressure off of Max because that wasn't at the end of the day, that was in the middle of it.
No, that was at the end. That was the last day.
Right? Was it? Oh.
Yeah, that was a squad behind me.
Well, now
That's
Max,
another really interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, it was the left-handed mag changes.
Yeah, Josh
it got a lot of people. It almost got me. I'm not gonna lie. It's like, oh, that is not, my finger should not be anywhere near there. No, bad.
I mean, do you even practice that? Like, is that something that you even like?
Before that match, probably.
Yeah, I spent 5 minutes.
Right?
The only thing I was really worried about was the mag placement. So in open, I actually went to I used a big stick for the load, the offhand load. So instead of, your normal shooting, obviously your offhand comes down, grabs mag, comes up. Well, basically I just wanted to switch that. So if I'm here, but I didn't want to change my belt. So anyway, I ended up doing a big stick. I grabbed it, beer can, turned my gun, and kind of jammed it in, really awkwardly looking, but it worked out. So it was mainly just in gear placement, how I wanted to do it, not in spending hours dry firing it to make sure. It's just like, get it in your head. You're going to take this slow because bad things can happen very easily. From administration, no, it was not specifically because of me. Okay, I'm not like, even if it was, whatever, it's water under the bridge at this point. But the issue is to fill people in. It was South Carolina State match, and there was one stage where I feel like it was set up intentionally this way, and another stage where it was unintentional. And the rule I'm talking about is regarding activating targets. Under the old rule set, which changed a few years ago, as long as you activate, so if it's a stomp pad or if it's opening a port, which activates a swinger, as long as you activate that mechanism prior to unload show clear.
Not your last shot.
Not your last shot. Nowadays, you get penalized if you don't activate it prior to your last shot.
Right.
So it's back then it was allowed. One of those stages had a head box of a swinger, obviously exposed. Full head box was available, and if you want, you could shoot it and then walk down range and open the port, and then you'd be done. That was the last target. I'm sorry, but if you don't look at that stage and go, hey, are we asking them to do this? And say, you're setting up that way and it's not on purpose, something's going wrong, very wrong here. And the other stage was able to do it because it was stomp pad activated swinger with very bulky wall stands, extremely bulky. Like we're talking multiple 2x4s side to side here for the wall stand. And it was attached to the shooting area. Under the old rules, it's an electricity rule, and you could stretch that rule depending on who listened to you. I never abused it, I don't think super bad, but it's part of the rule. And here's the thing regarding that particular match, and I won that match. And people got, as soon as 2 months later, the rule changed and people referenced my video that I posted and said it called it the Vlieger rule. It's still on Brian Enos forums calling it that. Here's the thing. I didn't come up with that. I got told about that by a friend who had already used that and already fought that fight before I even showed up to the range. Multiple people did that prior to me. But I won the match and I posted the video and I talked about it. As a competitor, I've kind of scooted away from trying to bend those because they've gotten better. The rules have gotten better, number one. But number two, it's the potential advantages of doing that are very, very few and far between and generally not worth arguing about. Versus several years ago where in that case, that's safe. I mean, you're shooting the swinger before it even activates. Come on. Yeah. You can just jump up on this wall stand, shoot, put 2 rounds in it, and then meander over the stomp box and be done.
Do you remember when you first started this game? What did people tell you? Because a lot of people told me to read the rule book. Like, if you don't know, you should read the rule book. So for me, you're using like little back loopholes that I think that's the smartest thing ever. I mean, that just to me shows that you have a knowledge about the game that's above and beyond what most people are even thinking about.
Here's the thing though. So we right now are talking in 2022 and the majority of our recent memories that we're drawing upon for a lot of these examples are 2017 to now, maybe 2018 to now. when CO and PCC were a thing. So we had a big, gigantic rule book refresh within the last 5 years, 6 years. Okay, so that closed a lot of the loopholes. But I'm saying is that rule book has grown from day one of this, of the USPSA, and even the early 2000s. It was production, L10, limited, open, revolver, and single stack, right? We had 2 different holster rules, and that was about it. There was nothing about bagging, about flagging your PCC, about 140
Dry
millimeter
firing in the
extensions,
berm.
dry fire in the berm, fault lines around your safe area that didn't exist yet. Like, we've added to the rules, and hopefully all of them have had a good reason for being added to the rule book, but the rule book has gotten bigger and more complicated as the years go by. Like, we're used to a lot of this stuff by this point because we've been living it with it for the last 5 years.
Well,
But
it's interesting you said that, because we've talked about that with other guests, but do you think that they should, it's only grown, it's never been consolidated and simplified. Do you think that instead of just continuing to add to it, do you think that something should be like put together and then make it more, because for new shooters, it's very hard. And now if you just keep adding stuff, this book that was 3 pages long is now turned into an actual book. It's very hard to navigate that also. So adding things is great, but do you think that they should also simplify and take things out that don't necessarily?
well, I mean, you can always simplify. It's a matter of how much you gain by doing so. I think it'd be worth looking at the specifically like how penalties are described, possible causes for DQs, maybe refining those areas. But when it comes to the rest of it, I mean, it's laid out fairly well, I feel like. I think they could do some wonders with layout, with where they have information in the book to make it make more sense. Like maybe a range administration section, or 2 separate books, one being range administration and one being competitor equipment, something like that. I don't know the answers here. I'm just saying, is that possible? Yeah. Is it something that I think needs to happen? No, I think it's fine the way it is right this second. I think a bigger problem is with the Evergreen rulebook. Evergreen, having the ability to rapidly update it is great to respond to situations that arise. However, people can get lost in the sauce. I printed out this rule book 5 years ago, and I'm not printing out again. Let's reference this rule book we've had in the clubhouse for 5 years. They're not pulling out their cell phones, or you can run into issues. But no, I don't think it needs a change. No.
Yeah, and if you put it on your cell phone, there's a search function, so it's a lot easier to find what you're looking for, Mike.
I just did my CRO research. Took me 10 minutes. Which that brings up another thing. If we need to change the research, to test you on, hey, this material has changed. We're going to throw some questions in there specifically about the material that's changed. Make sure our ROs are up to speed. That wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, it's kind of a little bit, it's on the same topic, but a little bit off. I mean, now that they've had this new push for ROs and people volunteering, because they always say it's a volunteer sport, I'm actually going to be working a match or 2 this year. Have you ever worked a match? I mean, you're a CRO. Do you get back that way, or you just shoot, like when it comes to majors, you work locals but not majors? Like, how do you?
What do you think?
Well, it's hard for me to say, because I mean, you're one of the top guys in the sport. I would say you're going to just compete at majors, and then maybe you would work, locals. And I wouldn't even be like, if I was a guy that wasn't necessarily a top guy and I was looking at you, I wouldn't even be mad that, oh, John's not doing his part. Like, I would never say that. I would just expect you that you're at a different level. And
I do work matches specifically to fight against that reasoning, or that belief.
Stigma.
That stigma. Yeah. Now I will say this, I'll probably never work nationals again, at least not while I'm competing at this level. I worked production nationals back at 9 days of nationals, DQ'd in open, and they put me on the same stage that I DQ'd on. That was fun.
Oh.
Yeah, that was kind of karma.
Ouch.
But no, I DQ'd hard. I went duck hunting, so I have no problem at I sent a 124 grain into low Earth orbit on the reload on a classifier. But no, I haven't worked any of this past. I helped set up. Like, we have a Kentucky State match happening next month, and I've already said that I'll be down there during the week to help set up stages and refine them and such. But with my work schedule and everything, I've not been able to commit the time, 2021 or probably this year. I do work at matches. Like, I worked the booth for my company at nationals last year in Area 8. But prior to that, I mean, I've worked Kentucky State, Tennessee State, nationals, I didn't even shoot the match, but I RO'd. That's how I won the JP. Was I RO'd the JP PCC championship for Area 5 back when they didn't want to have PCC at wherever the full match would happen.
I remember that.
And some MDs will just tell you flat out, I don't think PCC belongs in the sport.
Yep.
That's why I'm not offering it. But at least you're honest, man. You know, everyone's entitled to their opinion.
How do you feel about it?
But no, I worked. I didn't even shoot the match. Just worked it both days. So, you know, I've on purpose. I pick up the timer as much as reasonable at local matches. It gets kind of old sometimes, especially down in Florida. You know, it's tighter group of people that shoot. You know, you see the same guys 3 times a week. It's always the same people with the timer in their hands. It's like, come on, guys, come on, pick it up here. Funny story about the JP PCC championship. Actually, Kevin Mayfield helped put it on. He's who asked me to help RO. Great dude, great guy. So I made a post on the Monday after I got my JP. I said, hey, big thanks to JP, to Kevin Mayfield putting this on, for having an RO raffle, because it was an RO only side raffle. If you've been shooting long enough, you've seen them. And it was one JP and like 4 M&P shields and maybe some steel targets and stuff. And there was ROs. Only ROs were eligible for this drawing. It was after the match, after the stages were all torn down. We're all in the clubhouse having a brew. And I was on the phone and someone grabs me and said, hey man, you won. I'm like, you're screwing with me. Go in there and say, no, we're just screwing with you. Sit down. I was like, you guys, no, seriously, you won a JP GMR 15. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Hey, I own a PCC now. Cool. The next day I made a post about it, and someone, Kevin or someone else, asked me to take the post down or edit it because he was getting hate mail from competitors who were complaining that ROs got prizes that were only for ROs.
What?
And I want to say $20,000 to $30,000 worth of product was given to competitors. You know, it was all random draw and stuff. And so was the RO raffle.
Wow.
30 of us, and there was only like 6 guns or something like that. You know, it's still random draw. And I was like, yeah, this is yeah. I volunteered a whole weekend of my life to make sure you have a good match for zero other benefit. I mean, you really think he was gonna, you really think you can keep ROs around? You really think you can keep people who sacrifice their vacation days, their weekends, time with family, or the ability to be competitive at that match in particular, to run your butt through for several days straight? Like, no, there has to be incentive. Right. You know, or we're a volunteer sport. Yeah, but even volunteers get incentive. Even volunteers get some cookies every once in a while. Okay. You know, hey, you're volunteering at this blood drive. Thanks. Here's a cookie. Okay.
Right.
So complaining about ROs getting prizes is
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But Mike, there are also a lot of other ways you can give back to the sport besides volunteering as an RO.
I'm just saying, I feel good that, you know, I've been shooting now. This is my 4th season. I'm happy that I finally took my RO class and I'm finally actually going to be able to help. I feel like I'm doing my part a little bit. And I think I was slated to work 3 majors, but I'm only working 2. So I got Maryland coming up, and then there's another one. I can't even tell you what one it is, but there's another one.
What you just said, Kita, about giving back in other ways. Like I would tell you something. It is easier to show up at the match, RO for a few days and then leave, than it is to handle probably any of the other staff positions to run a major match. For example, Kentucky State last year, I helped set up for the weekend prior, and I spent several hours of my life making hardcover targets. Okay, electrical tape, razor knives, and targets in front of me. Like that's more, or putting stages on the ground that people like me can't pick apart and destroy. You know, that takes time out of your day. It's easy to show up, you know, on Friday, shoot the match, then work Saturday, Sunday. I'm not saying it's easy, but it doesn't take, it falls into place a little bit easier than, hey, I'm going to dedicate 2 weeks to building props, to making targets. Jeff Shanks up in Ohio, one of the hardest working ROs I know. When I was teaching one of those classes before Ohio, he was in the freaking clubhouse the weekend prior, all day. He was there before I got there and after I left. Okay, making hardcover targets. He had his stencils out, his fixtures, whatever he was using to make sure they were the same as possible. And he was making targets all stinking day. That match was on the ground before any other RO got there, thanks to him and 1 or 2 other people. Like that's harder than showing up and running a timer.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another level of dedication.
I like building stages. I like designing stages. So usually I'll help, or I will design stages and then show up early and help build them.
Down
I
in
mean, I
Florida,
don't mind ROing, but I kind of let my certification go.
What's your favorite kind of stage, Vlieger, to shoot? Like a 32 round big field course, 32 round burner, a 12 round speed shoot? Like, do you have anything in particular?
mediums, interesting medium courses.
That's my specialty. I'll have to design a stage for you to try and pick
A lot
apart.
of movement or a little movement? Like good footwork, solid technical footwork, or like
Dipstick-ish,
Yeah.
technical. You know, like you can have some
Interesting
hosing.
movers,
Yeah.
small square steel, painted different colors.
Small, you know, but I want options. Like a great example. I think it was 17. Anyway, one of the open nationals. Our squad, super squad, went to lunch, and you know, get an hour lunch, and you know, a lot of people stay on the stage and eat their snacks or BS with friends, or whatever, work on their gun. That lunch of day 2, I've never seen so many people of such a high level spend so long discussing the best stage plan. It was, if you look at the stage, and it was a standard square stage, but it had walls sticking out midway and walls in the middle. You had to hit all 4 corners and in the middle. And navigating around these barriers, navigating around the wall supports, like counting steps, timing it. I want to say 6, 7 of us spent a half hour discussing different plans. And it was like, in my head, I'm going, this is a good stage. When you have people like that spending so long trying to find the right answer, and there ends up being there is no right answer.
Yeah.
Because 3 different plans got ran all around the same time. And I think that match had another stage where similar thing happened, where there was multiple different viable ways to attack the stage. And depending on your comfort level, hell, even depending on your handedness, you know, if it's a symmetrical stage, but it has slight differences, you know, hey, maybe it's better to go against the grain as a righty this time. But that is a sign of a good stage. You don't have to have a high round count. And I think too many people get wrapped up in that, especially with the ammo shortage right now. It doesn't really make sense. Miami, Cincinnati match, it was 105 rounds of this local match. 6-stage match, 105 rounds.
You got 2 12s, that's 24, and then we'll use you with 4 for 75. Yeah, I mean, that's not bad.
Yeah. I'm saying, you know, as Americans, we want to shoot. Oh, we want to shoot all the BBs. We want to shoot.
That doesn't make it better.
That doesn't necessarily make it better.
It doesn't, but I think it lends a lot to, if you shoot a lot of locals, a lot of the times they're smaller, you know, 6 stage, like you said, 6-stage matches that are, you know, okay, we got.
You don't have to have a big bay or a big stage to be difficult.
No,
or to properly prepare you for a major match.
Well, and I agree with that. To me, though, a major match, though, is more like bigger stages tend that there's more to remember. And to me, it's more of a mental challenge to have, you know, 10, 28 to 32s and 2 12 speed shoots, because all the 12s, yeah, they could be technical with mini poppers and activators and turners and all this crap, but there's not much to think about other than, okay, like this is what we're going to do and I just have to execute it. Versus like, if I have to go through and like, man, if I don't get there a day early to do these stage plans for these big stages that I have to remember and do videos, like, you know, I'm going to be in trouble tomorrow. So like that's the difference to me, where yes, I agree that 12 round stages can be very good, but it's just not, there's not very much creativity as far as how you're going to shoot those 12 rounds. Like it's pretty much is how you're going to do it. It's just going to, who's going to do it.
And you can say a good stage is governed by different criteria as well. You can say, like, does it have something interesting in it? You know, like, for example, I have to activate the swinger from the far right side of the bay, but the swinger's on the far left. You know, that makes you have to think about it. Or maybe the activator's in the middle and swingers available from either edge of the shooting area, stuff like that. Stuff to make you make your brain go, oh, hold on a second. Okay, wait, okay, you know, okay, now I know how this works.
Right.
You know, interesting, something to make me wake up in the morning and drive the hour and a half to your match. You know, it's stuff like that. You know, interesting start positions. You know, we don't see it in America very often, but they do it in IPSC all the dang time. As an empty chamber. You know, you say empty chamber. I have 200 and something practice score logs. I have done empty chamber start exactly twice.
Interesting.
So I would equate raising the round count of a match to make the match better to adding a bunch of no shoots all over the targets to make the shooting harder.
Yeah, that's equally bad. That's worse. That's worse. Tennessee State.
It's kind of the same thing in my brain.
Yeah, Tennessee State a few years ago, like 250, 280 rounds required for the match. And over half the rounds of the match you're shooting on or around a no shooter hardcover. And like, I'm showing up being like, good thing I have a dot. Good Lord. And I was like, this is painful.
Good thing I know my offset too.
Yeah. Oh, I saw someone put 4 rounds into a no shoot's head.
Well, that's what I think
consecutively.
Yeah, the match directors always try to have that balance because I mean, you have the Vliegers of the world that are really, really good, and you want to challenge those guys, but you also don't want to make it so hard that the people that aren't very good or newer are discouraged and don't want to come back. So there's always a fine line of making it fun for everybody. You know,
you also need to have challenges in there that separate the wheat from the chaff, because if there aren't a lot of options, if there aren't unique challenges, then the scores are going to be so much closer. And falsely closer because they're not able to demonstrate their skill.
You could have a whole nother podcast talking about stage design. You know, there's things you can do that make people upset, like Area 3. You know, like Sherwin, love him to death, great dude, but he does not believe in disappearing targets. So he'll have a little shooting box 20 yards away.
I love that though.
I know. I think it's horrible.
You don't like that at all?
I think it punishes the living hell out of competitors of lower classifications. I think it punishes the hell out of low cap shooters, and I think it unfairly punishes people who have a malfunction.
That one I would agree with, but I just hate people that will do, and like you see the ones with I don't know what they're called, but they do this and they come all the way back and they
tip outs.
Yeah, and to me, if you're not going to shoot at it or even attempt it, that's not, I don't know, like that's not what the stage designer wanted to. Like, you should have to at least shoot at the targets once. And I like when they give you the second option to go down there for non-penalty mics, because I mean, the whole point I'm saying is
there's a good and poor way to accomplish that. Having a shooting box 20 yards away. Let me put it this way: that's something I personally despise, and that's why I don't shoot Area 3 anymore. I vote with my wallet. I was there for the pool noodle match back whenever that was.
Did it take off your ear pro or anything?
It
did. Had internal.
It did. I double plug. Oh man, we could. Tim Herron needs to be here so we can be angry together.
We've talked about that. Yeah,
yes. Yeah. Well, I watched Sloan Sanders get DQ'd in there. I watched multiple PCC shooters have malfunctions because the pool noodle's up against their ejection port. It wasn't safe. Forget what you want to say about equitability. It wasn't safe. If you're telling people in the stage brief, and I remember the ROs on it, John and Nancy Husbeck, great people. I love those. They're kind of had apologies in their faces when they're saying, "Hey, you might want to double plug. You might want to double muff for this. It's getting knocked off." And my first thought is, and you're letting people still shoot the stage,
right?
Like you haven't said that this might be a bad thing, like. And that's a whole other subject about once the match is on the ground, people are shooting it. Oh man, I've seen some people really play mental gymnastics about why the stage shouldn't be tossed.
Right.
Trying to salvage the match. And I'm one of the people that if you've lost competitive equity, it's no longer matters.
Right.
Yeah, at the point where ears are coming off, that's a safety issue, and at that point, the stage should be thrown. It should be stopped. Stop.
Multiple, matches every single week prove that you can have challenges, you can have interesting stage design, and you can have, more physical challenge than the other, for example, without being unsafe and without making people rage quit your area match.
All right. Well, I mean, we're getting close to 2 hours.
Yeah.
I only have 2 more questions for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's really for the viewer. What would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody that's just come in the game brand new, and what would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody that's been in the game looking to get better?
So to answer the first one, someone who's brand new into the sport, I would tell them, worry less about your equipment. Focus on what you're getting out of it. I started this sport, shooting once a month with my carry 1911 and 45. Didn't even look at scores. Hey, I didn't finish last. Cool. That's all. All I cared about was getting more proficient with my carry gun. So whatever reasons bring you to the range, keep that in mind. And those reasons may change, but don't worry about having the best fantastic blaster on the range. You're getting into this for a reason, focus on those reasons. If that reason is to play with a cool gun, man, go for it. It's free. It's free country. But don't lose sight of why you're showing up to this foreign environment with these weird, complex rules and people wearing NASCAR jerseys. Okay. Don't lose sight of why you're there. Okay. And if it's for you, stick with it. And then you can get into the nitty gritty. Someone who's been in it for a long time and looking to get better, video, and watch the same video multiple times. I tell people when I was teaching, tell them you watch your video 3 different times. First time you watch, you're just looking to get an overall idea, to get a
general impression
of how it went. Looking for big key points, like, oh, I stumbled, or hey, I'm noticing that retreats are screwing me up, something like that. The second time I watch it, I'm going to watch my upper body. I'm going to watch my hands and my eyes. I want to see where my eyes are going, where my head's going when I come into positions, and what the gun is doing, both before, during, and after. Am I pulling? I'm going bang, bang, looking away before that second shot is pulled, because that's bad, generally speaking. So I'm watching my upper body, and the third time I watch it, I'm watching my lower body. I'm watching my hips, my knees, and my feet. Okay, I'm watching, do I have to reposition when I want to reset? If I'm in a hard lane, did I have to spend a whole ton of time repositioning to get power, to be able to start moving? So then I want to look at my flexibility. I want to look at am I getting low enough? Am I getting wide enough for positions of that nature to get in and out of them efficiently? And you can bring all those notes together and start identifying your big areas you need to improve. So if you don't know the low-hanging fruit, or you can take a class from someone, who you feel like that is going to give you a benefit. But you can do a lot just by watching your own footage.
Yep.
Or you can send me a video review.
Yeah, you do that.
180firearmstraining@gmail.com. I'll slow it down. I'll voice over it. I'll give you drills to go with specifically your low-hanging fruit. It's not expensive.
Yeah, and it can pay dividends. When I was teaching, I can tell you the majority of that time differential that I was noticing with students was due to glaring errors.
Mm-hmm.
Or if and a lot of it just comes from, if you're more athletic, if you're more flexible, if you're not crippled, I guess I'm going to put it bluntly. Hey, you have your own limitations. I've had 4 knee surgeries, 2 wrist surgeries. Like, I am not what I used to be. So I need to operate within my limitations. But the time to push those limitations is not on the range of a loaded gun in your hand.
Right. All right. So do you have any companies you'd like to give some love to? I know you do.
Yeah, and of course, Mark 7 Reloading. If you want to load like you mean it, hit us up. We also have our shooting team out there. So if they may or may not have a code for you, if you want to reach out to one of them to get a discount on an auto drive. We also have our Apex line of presses, as well as the Revolution, and new stuff is always in the works. So keep your eyes open. Seymour Systems. When I shoot red dots, it's always Seymour. Shell Shock Technologies made some of the best 9mm cases and other cases coming to the market that you can get. 2-piece, stronger, lighter, magnetic. And of course, Rafferty Custom Guns. I wouldn't be where I'm at without the great equipment I have. You are going to have a long wait, but Pat makes some of the best pistols in the world.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, man.
It was a short 2 hours.
See you next time. Cheers. Cheerio. That's what I meant to say. Cheerio.
Cheerio. For Grant, yeah, our missing South African counterpart here, he would say cheerio.
Cheerio.
Yeah, no.